welcome to the Level Up Your Band podcast, episode 32. Hello, and welcome back to the Level Up Your Band podcast. My name is Gavin Patterson, and I'm here with Julian Pombo. Pure genius.
Hey!
He's a pure genius, drinking from his pure genius mug. It's been a while since I've seen that.
Yes, I am.
How are you this week?
Got that after I graduated with a 2-2. So yes, 100% a pure genius right there.
How you doing?
Yeah, no, I'm fine, man. I'm good. Things are starting to look up.
Oh yeah.
As you know, I've got a a PC coming next week. So that's very exciting.
A police constable.
Gavin and I have been talking about it, like after the podcast, just kind of like geeking out. Just mostly me going, "Yay!"
Yeah. You've had the same
Gavin
laptop
going,
for how long? 5 years, 6 years or something?
4 or 5 years.
Yeah.
For about 4 years. And it was great at the beginning. But like laptops do, like, because it's not modular in any kind of sense, you can't just, if something bugs out or something isn't as good as it used to be, like you can't really change things about.
Yeah,
like
you can get laptop
PC.
components, but if you want real computing power, you're better off with a tower. You just better cooling. You get like equivalent parts for laptops, but they're just not as powerful, speedy.
They're not as good. I think in the long run, it's technically cheaper because you buy the whole thing once, and then if you need to upgrade a thing here, you can just buy it and change it out, whatever.
Yeah.
It's
kind of like a drum kit in essence.
It is exactly like a drum kit.
If you need if you need more RAM, you just take out the RAM sticks, stick in some new RAM sticks. You can do it in like 10 minutes. I remember during lockdown, I tried to upgrade my Wi-Fi card on my tower because it's quite a low budget one. So I upgraded to get a faster one, and it also has Bluetooth built in. And it took me 5 or 10 minutes to just screwdriver, 2 bolts, pull it out, unhook the cable, stick in the new card, hook it up, and boom, and install the software. And it was like 10, 15 minutes. As it happens, it was faulty and I had to return it, but that's besides the point. It was really easy to do because it's just a tower PC. I remember when I first got that, I had just come from laptop, and it was not a particularly fast laptop. It did the job. Now I take for granted. See, if ever I go to someone else's computer or laptop and it doesn't respond instantaneously, I get so angry. I'm the angriest person in the world. It's like road rage. It's like, why is this so slow? It's useless. It's like, my friend has an iPad Air, the first generation. I've got the Air 2, and it's pretty fast, and I like it. But see, my friend's iPad, it's quite old, it's so slow. Like, it's not even slow, like, by general standards, but because it's slower than mine, it's the slowest thing in the world. Do you know what I mean? Because you're not used to it. Anyway, it'll be good to see your new PC.
Yeah. I'll send you pics.
Yeah. Oh, dirty boy. Anyway, so
I know.
Right.
I'll take the side panel off.
Oh yeah. So today.
Oh no.
Today's topic, we're continuing our instrumental series. This is part 4. We're recording part 4 before part 3 because reasons. So this is keyboard, part 4 keyboard. So I have decided to tackle this one because I am in fact a keyboard player. Don't play keyboard so much these days, but it's what I started on from the age of 6 or 7 years old, and getting lessons and playing in bands and stuff.
I always find it really fascinating when you meet musicians that are like really proficient on this one instrument, but it's not what they do to make money.
Yeah,
I met so many musicians like that. They're like, oh yeah, like I studied. I've got like grade 8 like euphonium.
Yeah,
but I play bass now.
Yeah,
it's like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
It's kind of like me. I did like a diploma in flute, and now I'm playing bass. So
yeah, it's funny. It's quite common, especially drummers. I know so many drummers that are keyboard players first. A friend of mine is an amazing drummer and plays guitar as well, but realised that he studied sort of classical piano to begin with. It's like, geez, like nothing this person can't do. I think Dave Weckl, actually, the jazz drummer, he started out on keyboard as well, so he can play piano, which means he can do like MIDI programming and stuff like that in his studio and knows all that sort of stuff. So we'll get on to that today. Right, so like the other episodes, we're going to kind of break it down into all the different things you should think about when approaching your instrument. So obviously it's slightly different depending on what you're talking about. But I think the first thing you should be concerned with when you are choosing a keyboard, so choosing a keyboard for what application and what you're going to use it for, that is kind of secondary to this. So first thing is, should you buy a keyboard that is weighted or not weighted? You're like, what's that? So a piano has what you call weighted keys. What it basically means is it's the action of the keys when you press them, they feel heavy. The reason that they're heavy on a piano is because you are physically pressing a button that moves a lever, which fires a hammer at a string, and that has weight. It's like a lever. That's why it has that feel. And keyboards don't need to have that because they're not pushing any hammers, they're not plucking any strings, they're not doing anything physically. All they're doing is pressing a button that triggers an electric note. So if you've ever played a synthesizer, it's like really, really light feeling. And what keyboard manufacturers do is they put weights on the keys to make it feel like you're playing a real piano. So that's the first thing to consider. When I first started, the first thing I ever played, keyboard instrument, was an electric organ, and it was not weighted because organs aren't weighted. Electric organs, anyway. Yeah. And it's really
even think
light
that
action.
Real life organs are.
Yeah, I don't think they are.
Sorry, I'm talking over you because of the internet.
Don't worry. So when I wanted a keyboard, I wanted it to have light action because I was used to playing my grandmother's electric organ from the 1970s.
Wow.
And it has a really, really light action, and I just like that feel, so I went for a 61 key light action keyboard naturally. But if you've grown up in a house with an upright piano which has got naturally weighted keys, then you'll probably want a keyboard that has weighted keys or that weighted feel. Now, there's some keyboards don't give you that option depending on the instrument, but most keyboards nowadays have a weighted option, unless it's like a little small synthesizer. Thing to think about as well is keyboards with weighted keys weigh a ton. They're so heavy. Yeah. Especially the 88 keys, the big long ones. So it's basically go whatever feels familiar to you, whatever feels natural. I like to just go around keyboard shops and just have a feel, because there's no two keyboards that feel the same in terms of weight. you could have, this is weighted and this is also weighted, and you could have a play of them and they feel totally different because some are like they've just weighted differently. I suppose it's the same with any instrument. It's like it just feels different.
Yeah.
Um,
I suppose the other thing as well to think about is it'll be the whether you have weighted keys or like keyboard keys.
Yep.
That'll affect how you'll play as well.
Yeah.
Because doing like more percussive kind of like Stevie Wonder style,
Yep.
playing is going to be really hard on on weighted keys.
Yep.
So that's another thing to think about.
Yep.
Yeah,
it can do.
But yeah,
I know some people who can do all that stuff even on weighted keys. But unless you're a prodigy,
absolutely slamming it.
yeah. Doing like glissandos and stuff on weighted keys is rips the skin off your fingers. Doing it on a synth action keyboard is a doddle. It's so easy.
Yeah.
So we'll get on to once you know what kind of thing you like and what you want to buy. So it depends on what you're going to be using it for. If you're playing in a band, you've got to think about like what. Maybe you've had a keyboard in the past. It's maybe not cut it, and you want to upgrade. You want to try and get something a bit better. So there's different types of keyboards, and you need to figure out what one is going to suit what you're going to be doing. So we'll go through. I'll just name some types of keyboards that you can get. Everything from basic up to crazy money. So first of all, everyone is familiar with this one. It's the standard home keyboard. That's what everyone learns in school. That's your typical Casio keyboard.
Oh, right, okay.
Inbuilt speakers. It's got a button on the side that goes DJ. You know the one. It's just a cheap £100, £100 to £250, £300 range. It plays beats. It plays single finger chords. That is actually what I learned on.
Mm-hmm.
That is that was the instrument I learned on. Was the home keyboard. The first keyboard I had was a Yamaha workstation with little mini keys. Then I upgraded to a PSR 280 Yamaha, and eventually I got an Arranger piano, Arranger keyboard, and then moved my way up to the workstations. But so home keyboard, everyone knows what they are. It's very common, and
you can get. Yeah, I was gonna say like the newer ones now they're like MIDI capable and stuff, so you can use them as MIDI.
Mine was as well.
well.
My old home keyboard had a little MIDI output. It wasn't. It was the old-fashioned actual MIDI cable, not USB.
Yeah. No, now it's USB. But
yeah. So I'll maybe explain that when we get to that. Up from home keyboard, this is the sort of the direction I went from home keyboard to an Arranger keyboard. An Arranger keyboard is exactly the same as a home keyboard, except you can record and make layers. You can customize your sounds, but it's based on the home keyboard thing. So what would you need an Arranger keyboard for? You would need it for if you are a one-man band playing in a wedding band and you just go out with a keyboard and a vocal mic. Some of them even have a vocal input, so you can actually plug your microphone into the keyboard and it comes out the speakers. So you can play along with yourself. You see these guys in like clubs in Ibiza and stuff, like little cafes and stuff. They'll maybe just have a keyboard player and a singer and singing and playing keyboard at the same time. So he's got his MIDI drums and his bass and all that playing in the background. It's quite cheesy and tacky, but
yeah, you've just reminded me.
What?
You just reminded me of my holiday, and I was like 2 years ago. I went to Malta. It was great. I highly recommend. Well, obviously not now because there's a pandemic going on.
Is there?
When it all stops, really nice place. Definitely go visit. Really, really cool. But there was one night where we were eating in the restaurant of the hotel we were staying at, and we just start hearing some music, and we're like, what the what is that? I thought it was just like the radio or something, but it was that kind of feeling where I was hearing all these pop songs, but they had a bit of an uncanny valley type of feel to them, and I looked outside and there was just some wee sad Maltese guy with a keyboard just singing his heart out, by himself,
Right.
by a pool.
You've no idea.
And I was like, oh,
You've no idea how popular Arranger keyboards are. Honestly, they are so popular. They sell so many of those keyboards. I don't get the appeal personally. I mean, I have one. I have a Yamaha Tyros, which is like that is the Arranger keyboard to have. 15
that's
years ago.
the wee silver one you have in the studio, isn't it?
Yep. It doesn't really get used to its full capacity now. It's quite old. It's 2002. It came out, I think.
Right.
So it's
okay.
quite an old boy. Nearly 20 years old. I got it. I got it to upgrade because I had a home keyboard, and the upgrade from home keyboards is Arranger keyboards, and the Tyros, they don't actually make the Tyros anymore. They had, I think, 5 or 6 editions of it, and it's now onto the Genos, the Yamaha Genos. Korg have one as well. It's the PA series, and it's for people who play like social clubs and church halls, and they come in and it's usually playing to slightly older people playing their old, classics.
Yeah.
Frank
I'm
Sinatra stuff.
looking them up as you're saying the names.
Yep.
And like, holy heck, that's a lot of money for a
Yes,
keyboard.
they're very expensive. They're like £4,000 and £5,000. Some of these keyboards.
Yeah.
The Tyros at the time, I think, was £2,000 when it came out in 2002.
Yeah. Well, the Tyros is still like the newest version is like It's like $2,000.
Yep.
And the Genos that you were talking about there is like
Yep.
3,300 quid.
It's a lot of money. And all it does really is the exact same as your home keyboard, Casio keyboards, except really good quality beats, all like proper samples and stuff. And it's just for one-man band kind of situation. And it records, I think it records audio. I'm not quite sure about that. It records your playing, and you can play back and have backing tracks and stuff. So that's what that's for. So we'll kind of take a side step, and we'll talk about stage pianos. So the sort of the dominator in this field is the Nord. The Nord, Roland, Yamaha, they all kind of have a thing, but the majority of people who use stage pianos they're Nord users. So a stage piano is essentially, it's just a keyboard, usually 88 keys, that its sole purpose is just to play the sound of an instrument. So it has all your keyboards you can think of. So your pianos, your electric pianos, your organs, your clavinets, some strings, maybe a bit of bass, some synth pads, some synth leads, and that's it. That's it. It has some effects like reverb, delay, some pitch shift, some other bits and bobs and funky stuff. You can get some high-end ones and low-end ones. But it's basically just a piano, a keyboard that just plays sounds for a band, usually for a band. It doesn't play any drum beats in the background. It doesn't do any of that fancy stuff. It's just an instrument. It's probably one of the most popular instruments amongst musicians in bands.
Yeah. They are pretty versatile though. You can do quite a lot with them.
Oh, yeah.
Just because of things like,
I think you can do splits and stuff like
USB connectivity and stuff.
That's a different kind of I'm just talking about the keyboard in and of itself.
The keyboard in and of itself. But yeah.
So I think you can do splits and stuff. So you can like split the keyboard in two, and you can do bass sound on the left hand and a piano sound on the right hand with a string pad on top, and you can layer things up and do that. It's the most, if you're playing in a wedding band, you're probably looking at a stage piano, most likely, unless you're doing really complicated stuff with lots of different patches and samples and stuff. Then you'll probably want a workstation, or like Julian was saying, MIDI connectivity. So a lot of these keyboards, these modern keyboards, have a little plug in the back called a USB plug, and you can plug your USB cable into a laptop or a external synth box, like a sampler or something that plays sounds just in and of itself. Like you can hook up to like GarageBand and play samples off GarageBand or synths off GarageBand or something. So you're just taking the notes you play on the keyboard, taking that information and sending it somewhere else.
Oh!
And Julian has just ruined everything with his cat.
Yeeted myself.
Yet again.
Yeah. Hi. Sorry. It's just, she was wanting attention.
At this point, I think Hazel deserves a credit for like co-host of the podcast.
Yeah.
Professional
you know
interrupter.
What? I think she was like, oh boy. So it's because it's like, I don't know how they do it, man. It's like 35 minutes until their dinner. And and Jess doesn't care, she'll just wait, but Hazel, on the other hand, will just
destroy the
circle around you like a little shark.
Yep.
And like bump into things and knock things over and just do stuff until you feed her. So there she is.
Top tip, don't get a cat.
Stinky.
So
no, just don't.
MIDI.
Don't get a pet.
A lot of these keyboards have MIDI connectivity, and you can connect them up to other stuff. So if you have a stage piano like a Nord, and you've got your basic piano and your strings and your basic synths and stuff, you can use the keyboard sounds that's inside the keyboard, but you can also send the MIDI information to a laptop and play some of your own custom sounds. So say in some modern music, you've got specific samples and patches that have a specific sound unique to that song, and you only use it once, and you can't build it on your stage piano. You can trigger an external source with your keyboard. It's quite easy. I think that's probably the most common thing you see in wedding bands. It's quite complicated and it's quite finicky because you're relying on a laptop, and laptops love to crash, especially in live situations. Laptops are so not stable, especially in a gig situation.
Yeah.
I know of
a lot of...
What's up?
Yeah. No, I was going to say, like, what keyboard player in the band that I play in does is it's quite interesting. He has a Nord, but the Nord has like a MIDI controller, has like USB capability, so he hooks up his iPad to the Nord and has patches and things like that and things ready to go on his iPad, and he just kind of does it through that. So there's lots of different ways to do it.
Yeah, it's because we live in 2020, technology's come on quite a lot. In the olden days,
oldie times,
if you wanted multiple sounds, you had to buy multiple keyboards. And you had to, if you wanted a string sound, you had to get a string machine, which was an actual keyboard that made strings and only strings. If you wanted a synth sound, you could buy like a Korg Poly 6, or you could buy a Moog, or you could buy I don't know, an MS-20 or whatever. And each instrument had its own sound, and you had just loads of keyboards all around. You've seen those gigs where there's like a keyboardist with 7 keyboards all around about him.
Yeah, prog bands.
Yeah, prog bands. Yeah, that's this classic example.
Yeah. There's a really cool. I need to see if I can find it again, but there's a really good DVD. It's like Pat Metheny, who's a jazz guitar player, and his band, and the piano player in that, I can't remember his name, but he's awesome. He's really good. But he has like when he's playing, he has a grand piano in front of him, and like 3 keyboards, like one on top of the other, and then like one over there. And there's just moments where he's like playing piano and playing a keyboard and doing this, and it looks really awesome. Yeah. But
But nowadays you don't need to do that.
Thank goodness we don't need to do that.
So some clever clogs just discovered in the 1970s or 80s, can't remember, that you can connect all these instruments together using something called MIDI. MIDI stands for Musical Instrument Digital Interface. What it does is you can have a master keyboard and slave keyboards. So say you work with your main keyboard, say your Nord or whatever, and what they used to do in the olden days is bring all their keyboards to the gig, and all of them had MIDI connectivity, meaning that you could play one keyboard, and then in turn, using MIDI, that keyboard could make all the other keyboards play at the same time. So when you press a C or a D on your main keyboard, it will play a C and a D on every other keyboard that you choose. And it will create layers from those keyboards. And it wasn't possible in the past to do that. Before MIDI, you had to physically play the instrument manually. So MIDI was a breakthrough for keyboards. So you could control multiple things at one time. And MIDI not only transformed the instrument world, it also transformed lighting. I think it actually came from lighting, if I'm not mistaken. It's called DMX. So what that is in a lighting rig, you have, the stage lighting. That's what I'm talking about. You'll have like if you're ever at a gig and you look up and you see like loads of stage lights and stuff, maybe like 10 in a row. They're called like park hands and stuff. So they're all on the rig, and they're all connected via DMX, a DMX cable, which runs back to a lighting desk, and they're all running on a channel. So you can select them on different channels, which match up back to the desk. So when you turn up one fader on the desk, it will turn everything up on that channel. So all the white lights can be on channel 1, all the green lights on channel 2. This is simplistic, but it's kind of gives you the idea. Yeah. It means that you don't have to turn up 10 lights with 10 fingers all at the one time. You can just turn it up with one fader. And it's exactly the same thing with the MIDI. You can press one note and it presses multiple notes on multiple keyboards. But nowadays, you can do all this within one keyboard. That's like a workstation, so you can create layers of sounds within one keyboard. So we kind of mentioned some synthesizers there. There's synthesizers came around in I'd say the late 60s, early 70s. Didn't really come into popularity until the late 70s. Popularized by folk like Kraftwerk. Probably the most famous synthesizer is probably the Moog. I think it was Robert Moog, M-O-O-G. Everyone says Moog, but it's not Moog, it's Moog. And that's an analog synthesizer. And what it does is, if you think about a musical instrument, it's usually an acoustic instrument. It usually requires hitting, striking, plucking, strumming, doing something to create a vibration which makes a sound. But someone came up with the idea that if you could use electricity to generate an electrical pulse, like an oscillation, and then amplify it and then put it through a loudspeaker, it would make a sound. And that's where synthesizers were born. Was kind of born out of that. The first sort of most popular version of that would have been the Moog synthesizer. So you've probably seen a few of them kicking around. I know a few people who actually own them. They're really expensive now. So they actually have oscillators inside them that generate an electrical frequency, and then through lots of complicated circuitry, you can manipulate the sound and make it sound like different things by using filters and distortion and loads of effects, and then make a sound. People use them for bass. You can make drums out of them. You can make an entire orchestra out of these sounds. and it changed the way music works, really, and especially in the 1980s. Like, everything was all synth-based, and that's kind of where things all changed. Now, in the 90s and later, the synthesizer was used kind of differently. It became more integrated. If you listen to like 80s music when the synthesizer came out and digital technology, everything you heard was all digital, even the drum kits. It was just, everything was very, very digital sounding. Whereas now you get a nicer balance between acoustic instruments and digital instruments. So when digital really took off and got really good, you got emulators. For example, the keyboard I have, which is a Korg Kronos, has analog synthesizers within it, but they're not real. They're just emulations. They're just digital emulations. It's kind of like a guitar amp simulation, or, it's not an actual real physical thing. It's faked in a sense.
Yeah.
It's still, it sounds amazing. I mean, so I use a workstation keyboard. So that was the next point. Workstations are unlike arrangers. Arrangers are more for like one-man band. They've got drum kits and stuff on them, and you can play chords, and it's kind of like for like functions and weddings and stuff. Workstations are good for really, really complicated things. So if you're an MD, a musical director, and you're doing a show or something, a workstation is excellent, because if you're in a pit band and you've got a group of musicians playing for a musical show, like, I don't know, Cats or something, your keyboard can have a backing track playing, it can have a click track being sent to separate individual headphones, it can have strings layered up, recorded in a studio 6 months ago, playing at the same time, going up to the front of house and to any of your monitors. It can have all these multiple setups, and you can play along with it, and it's interactive, and it's super complicated. They're really cool keyboards. They can layer up. You can mix and match. It's got an inbuilt mixer. You can record 16 tracks of audio and 16 tracks of MIDI. It's a real beast. It's like the upper end of what is possible with a keyboard. I got my hands on a Korg Kronos back in 2012, and I've still got it, and it's still great. The Kronos is sort of the flagship workstation keyboard. I think we're on to the Kronos 2 now. It's a phenomenal machine. There's nothing it can't do. It has, like I said, inbuilt emulations of synthesizers. So it's got a Korg MS-20. So the MS-20 is it's a mono synth that came out in the 80s, and they recently reissued it maybe 5 years ago, and it's got it built in. It's got the Korg Poly 6, which was a keyboard back in the 80s as well. It's built in as well. It's a polysynth. What I mean by polysynth and monosynth means that you can only play one key at a time. Polysynth means it's you can play more than one key, so you can play chords and stuff. And it's all built into this workstation keyboard, and you can get that sound. It's great. It also has MIDI connectivity, so you can connect up to a laptop and play external sounds. It's a proper beast. They are extremely expensive, however. So you've got like things like Kurzweil. That's another famous brand. The Korg Kronos. You've got the Yamaha. I forget the name. There's a Yamaha workstation keyboard. It's quite popular. I think Roland do one too. You'll see a lot of big artists use the Kronos. Queen keyboardist, he uses a Kronos because it has like built-in vocoder, it has backing track capabilities, it has multiple patches. It can fit a whole show really easily, and it's much better than a stage piano like a Nord, because the Nord doesn't have anything. It doesn't have a setlist mode. So the Kronos has a setlist mode, meaning that you can have preloaded sounds and settings and all pre-saved and loaded in the order that you are going to be playing them in your gig. So you have a little changer pedal, and it just snaps through all your different sounds in order that you're going to be playing them at your gig seamlessly with no volume changes. It's really great. And workstation keyboards, if you need something that's really complicated to deal with the type of music that you're playing, I would recommend a workstation like that. So, moving on to the MIDI controller. Now, do you still have your MIDI controller keyboard?
Yeah, I have it somewhere. I can.
So
I have a smaller one actually, which I can show you.
It's basically you don't have to get out. It's
All right.
It's essentially just a controller. So it's a keyboard that doesn't have any inbuilt sounds at all. It's just a controller. So it has lots of knobs and twiddly things and buttons and stuff that can map to external parameters. So it's just like a steering wheel in a car. It doesn't do anything in and of itself. It just does stuff to other things. Has no inbuilt sounds. I've never owned a MIDI controller because I've never needed to have one, because I have a keyboard that has sounds built in, and it can also act as a MIDI controller. So that's what I always use.
Aye. Yeah, I suppose it's an option. It's not so much a good option for like for gigging, I wouldn't think, just because of reliability.
Yep. I know people who use MIDI controllers live. So what they do is they take out like a Roland MIDI box. So it's just a MIDI box. It's got like 1,000 sounds on it, and you just tune the box, and the piano triggers the box. The sounds are in the box.
I see, gotcha.
And that worked. That was quite a popular thing back in the 90s.
Okay. Well, yes, I suppose. But it's a really MIDI controllers are a good option if you're
home studio
producing. If you're if you've got like a home studio, and you don't have the money to throw at a workstation. A MIDI controller is going to be pretty decent anyway, because you'll be able to do all of that, all of the stuff that you needed to do. Record. I don't know. A lot of them come with drum pads on them now, so you can just you can record your drums and your whatever keys, whatever lines you want to do. So definitely something to think about, and like a pretty decent one won't cost you a lot of money. I got like a 60 something. Yeah, I think 61. 60 keys or something like that. 61 keys.
There's usually 3 types of keys you can get. So you can get a 61 key, which is
76,
77. No, 73, and then 88. So there's the 3 sort of sizes that you tend to get is 61, 73, and 88. I have right now a 61 key, which is 1, 2, 4, 5 octaves, which is all I need, and it's synth action, because I grew up on synth action and I grew up on 61 key keyboards. I didn't need an 88 keyboard. It's I don't really. I didn't grow up playing piano. I grew up playing keyboard. So this is all I need. If I need extra room, like I need extra keys, I use my octave pedal, and it the whole thing goes up and down.
A lot of keyboards, you just press like minus, when it modulates it down an octave or whatever.
And the beauty with the Chord Chronos is, when I used to play keyboard in a proper band, you can say you're playing a wee string bit. You can have your strings, playing up high or whatever, but you can play it in the middle of the keyboard. You can transpose them all the way up, so you don't have to move your fingers. And if you need to change patch to a piano, rather than moving your whole hand down, you can have it programmed so that it transposes it down for the next patch, and you just click next patch, and it seamlessly gets all your remembered settings like immediately with no breaks, and you can just continue playing. It's a great thing. So with that, we'll move on to the sort of the old-fashioned stuff. So we'll start with electric piano. Electric piano is, I don't know where that originates, probably the 50s. late 50s maybe, the electric piano. So I'm thinking of instruments like the Fender Rhodes. I know the Fender Rhodes Mark I came out in the 60s, but there may have been things out before that. I think there's been 5 or 6 iterations of the Rhodes, different marks, Mark 1, Mark 2, Mark 3, Mark 4, Mark 5.
Yeah, I'm on the wiki page for the Rhodes.
I'm using
it's
my
quite interesting.
internal knowledge. So the Fender Rhodes is an actual. It's an analog acoustic instrument. Essentially, it produces an actual physical sound, and then gets amplified through a speaker, a loudspeaker. It's actually moving air rather than taking some patch of a hard drive like they are nowadays. They're actually not physically doing anything. So there's some beautiful instruments. You've probably heard loads of examples of Fender Rhodes, but maybe not the actual Fender Rhodes, but maybe a copy of it on a digital keyboard. I know I have Fender Rhodes patches. There's sort of digital recreations on the Kronos keyboard, and they're very good, but obviously they're not as detailed as the real thing. They're like 95% there, like everything. If you want the real thing,
and you
get
actually
the real
have
thing.
to tune them as well.
You have to tune them, because they're physical, real instruments. Another example would be the Wurlitzer, which is a very similar kind of sounding keyboard. It's got a beautiful sound, that the Whirly, as it was called. The most famous use of a Wurlitzer would be "Best Friend" by Queen. The very first instrument you hear is a Wurlitzer. The bang ding ding da ding ba ding ding, that first thing you hear. It's probably
that
the most
little
famous.
bass line, boom, 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 boom. Yeah,
it's a great sound. And then finally, I've got on here the Honor clavinet. Now that's a funny story, that one. So that was an instrument made by the company Honor. Honor made, like, they were famous for making mouth organs, mouthies, harmonicas, and drum kits and stuff like that. Usually low budget,
they make guitars as well,
cheap stuff. Really? Okay. So the clavinet was made for Baroque harpsichord musicians and students. So the issue back in the day was people learning harpsichord couldn't play the harpsichord and in their flat, right? They had to go to university to play on the school harpsichord, and that was really difficult because harpsichords are really expensive. They would only have 1 or 2, and there's like 10 students. What's going to happen? You're not going to be able to get on the thing. So Honor was like, gap in the market. Let's make an electric harpsichord. So what it was is a wooden instrument, and inside the keyboard there were strings, like harpsichord, and the strings were plucked by these little hammer type things when you press the keys. So it made the sound of a harpsichord, and then it had a preamp, and then came out the instrument and into a loudspeaker, and it made the sound of an electric harpsichord, and it was pretty decent. However, nobody bought it. But there were some people that did buy it, and it was not the classical people. It was the pop, funk genres, the sort of R&B, and the most famous use of the clavinet is, of course, the infamous Superstition by Stevie Wonder. And it turns out that the clavinet is one of the funkiest instruments ever made, and it was not intended for that purpose. It was intended for something totally different. And it, honestly, you listen to the Honor clavinet. It is the coolest, funkiest instrument ever made by far.
Yeah, you can do some really cool stuff with it.
Oh, it's got a pitch bend and everything.
You can also, like, see if you get a clavinet and you put it through a fuzz pedal.
Oh, it's just amazing. It
sounds great, man. It practically sounds like a it sounds like almost sounds like an electric guitar. Yeah.
Yep.
It's awesome.
It is an awesome instrument, and you can also make it sound like a Rhodes. You can make it sound like a Fender Rhodes. Oh yeah, you can. There's so many different patches and options and pickups because it's got like 3 or 4 pickups on it, and you can make it sound like pretty much anything. And such a beautiful instrument. It's so versatile. It's more versatile than people think. Yeah. The problem with it is it's ruined because anytime you hear it, you're like, oh, it just sounds like superstition. So people have tried everything to try and make it sound like something else. I know a few people who have owned the actual instrument, and I would absolutely give my back teeth to own one, but they cost about £3,500 because they stopped making them. I think they made them in 1973, I think. They had different versions, but it's the famous one is the Honor Clavinet D6. It's kind of like the famous instrument. It's on every keyboard on the planet as a patch, and none of them sound anything like it. The real clavinet it can't be replicated. I've never heard a decent replication of it. So moving on from electric pianos, we're going back in time a little bit to the organ. So from what I could see, there are 4 different types of organs that we should care about as far as popular music is concerned. First of all, the most popular one in our kind of genre of music, the sort of pop rock scene, the drawbar tone wheel organ. So a famous organ. You've heard of the Hammond organ. It's a very unique kind of style of organ. It uses something called a tone wheel. A tone wheel is a metal wheel that spins, and because it's made of metal, it generates an electromagnetic interference.
Right.
And if you put a magnetic pickup next to that, you'll pick up that interference just like a guitar, and it will generate an electric signal and can be amplified and make a sound. That's how you get the sound of a tone wheel organ. It's just like a guitar, except instead of a string vibrating, it's a metal wheel going around next to a magnetic pickup. And then you put it through a Leslie, which is a type of speaker for an organ, and it has a Leslie, a rotary, it has a fan on the bottom of the speaker. So when the fan spins, what it does is it interferes with the sound, so it gives it a sort of vibrato, like a whoa, 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 whoa. You'll hear that on organs. So they'll have like a chord, so like la. It's really cool effect. You'll hear it all the time. My electric organ that I grew up on had that effect. I had a Leslie. I had a fan on the speaker, a physical fan, and it's just always fascinated me. It was so cool. So you can emulate that in an electric organ. So moving on to something a bit older, the harmonium, which is a reed organ. I've actually had a shot at one of those as well. It's basically just a big accordion, because accordions use reeds. So it's air passes through a reed, which generates a vibration, which then makes a sound. So a harmonium is a big old thing. It's huge. Big, heavy. It looks like a big mantelpiece with keys. It's quite funny. Usually find them in British homes, really old-fashioned British homes, usually with doilies and ornaments on it. It's like really dark wood, really old-fashioned. Usually with a mirror on them. They're really, really old-fashioned. They were quite popular at one time. So what it is, it's a pedal organ. So to get the air into it, if you're playing an accordion, you've got the bellows, so you've got the air intake into the bellows, and then the action of you doing that passes air through the reeds, and that's what makes a sound. But a harmonium, you have to basically ride it like a bike. It's got 2 pedals that you pedal back and forward, and it pumps air into an intake and then passes through the reeds. It is bloody hard work. It's a hard instrument to play.
Well, you just reminded me. People will have also, if you've seen Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, the Disney cartoon, Grumpy is actually playing one with his butt.
Yes, so. That's right. That's a harmonium.
He's just sort of seesawing between the 2 pedals.
It's really hard to play.
Classic.
Again, my grandmother had one. It's still there. I can play it whenever I want.
It's still working.
It still works. Yeah, it's probably over 100 years old. It's probably more than that, actually. Maybe even 200 years old. It's really, really heavy. Like the pedals, you need some workout. and it sounds terrible to my ear. It doesn't really make that many different sounds. It has different reeds, and it's got stops on it where you can like have different sounds, engage different reeds. But yeah, that was a popular instrument. So we'll get on to the last two. The next one is the pipe organ. A pipe organ is what you see in a church. It's big old pipes, and it's the same. It's the same principle as a harmonium, except it's not reeds. It's air based, so it fires a bunch of air through a pipe, and like a flute, you can explain this better. So when you pass air over a hole,
basically
makes a sound, and then the pipe,
or like they kind of look more like for the people. Oh, for goodness sake! For the people watching on YouTube, the pipes end up looking a little bit like the bit of a recorder, or like the bit of a whistle there, like this bit. So you blow into it, and then a bit of air just sort of. I can't really describe it very well, but basically it kind of skips over it and creates a vibration.
Yep.
So it's the same kind of idea, but on like a pipe organ, it's really cool because you have like different stops that make different sounds.
Yep.
It's basically just a wind band.
Yeah.
And an instrument on one keyboard.
It's a fascinating
like
instrument.
And flutes and oboes and
yeah. So to get the sound of it was basically to try and emulate the sound of an orchestra. That was the intention behind it. So they had like pipe designers who would try and design a pipe to sound like a clarinet or to sound like a flute, to sound like a horn. And some of them sound really, really quite close.
Yeah.
And the expression pulling out all the stops is when you basically pull out it's like plugs. Pull out all the stops. It means you are engaging all of the pipes. You're playing like the fullest sound. They're really amazing instruments, and they're huge. I mean, it's one of the largest instruments you can make. It's the size of a building. Yeah. They're massive.
If you want to hear like personally, like if you want to hear one, if you haven't heard one of those in action, I don't know what rock you've been living under, but listen to Sanson's Symphony Number 3, his organ symphony. It's unbelievable.
Yep.
It's so good. So it's kind of like it's basically like a little organ concerto.
Yeah.
But it's so epic.
Mm-hmm.
It's so good. You need to go listen to it. It's great.
Yeah. Cool. And the final type of organ is electric, which is kind of what we're all familiar with. Electric organ is basically just a bunch of samples saved on a hard drive, and you play notes and it sounds like the thing. That's what I grew up on. They're quite old. I think they came in the 70s, kind of more popular. And it's trying to emulate the sound of a real organ. So it tries to emulate the sound of a pipe organ or a reed organ or whatever. And it's basically just like a keyboard with saved patches saved on a hard drive or tapes, like little tape loops. There's a couple of keyboards actually I missed out in here, like I'll just add them in briefly. The Mellotron. Mellotron came out in the 1960s, I think, and it's basically a keyboard that when you press the key, it engages a tape player and plays a tape loop. So you can record anything you want on it, and it was like basically the earliest form of a synthesizer kind of thing. So you could have a tape for every note. So on C, you play a C note string tape loop, and it only lasts 10 seconds. So it would play meh for 10 seconds and then stop because it would run out of tape. And then when you take your finger off, it springs back to the start, and then you press it again and it'll play the same tape again. The most famous use of a mellotron is the beginning of Strawberry Fields by the Beatles. This tape flutes, it's recorded flutes on a little tape loop. That's the mellotron. I didn't think it was popular enough to include it, but I'll just...
No, well, you can get some pretty convincing VSTs.
Yeah.
That do a pretty good job of it. So
it's a decent instrument.
Yeah, something like that.
And then lastly,
Yeah, it's great.
the good old,
it's a really cool
the good old piano. So there's three sort of variants of a piano. You've got an upright piano, which everyone knows, everyone's seen, everyone probably has one in their house. Or,
they go for free. They go for free on Gumtree.
Yeah,
like
yeah. And in school, you'll see them in school, upright pianos. Upright means that basically the strings in the piano run up the way.
Up the way.
Yeah. And then you get a baby grand piano, which is the strings go horizontally, and it's basically just a little grand piano. You see them in some church halls, some theatres. You'll see them in maybe clubs and stuff, just sitting up the back somewhere, little baby grands. And then you've got the big one, the big daddy of them all, the grand piano, the big boy. The sort of £150,000 worth Steinway pianos, really, really big, black.
You could buy a house for that kind of money.
Yes,
pianos.
That's the granddaddy of all pianos. If you're lucky enough to ever play one of them, it's like unlike anything else. It's despite its name, it's not quiet. Piano meaning soft or quietly.
Yeah.
But it's that's kind of the actual keyboard though. Talking about the keyboard is actually older than the piano. The keyboard goes back long way before that. I don't actually know when the first keyboard instrument. Would it be something around about harpsichord, probably before that?
I would imagine it would be like a harpsichord or a clavichord, but I'll look it up first.
I don't know when organs came in.
Keyboard instrument. It depends on whether you So apparently, the earliest known keyboard instrument was the ancient Greek hydraulis,
right,
which is a pipe organ that was invented in the 3rd century BCE. So there you go.
If I'm right in saying the keyboard would look different to it does now, because now you've got the white keys and the black keys, and you've got 3-2,
there's
3-2.
a lot of different.
That was standardized at some point.
I think that would have been standardized around the Baroque period, probably.
Yeah.
Or just before that.
If I'm right in saying the harpsichord
because
transformed into the fortepiano, or the piano forte, whatever it's called.
Yes, that's right.
And then into the piano, which is slightly.
And then into the piano, and the grand piano as we know it, like it's just actually the reason it's kind of the way it is because of, if I remember correctly, it's because of the can't remember. I think he's Hungarian, Hungarian composer. I don't remember his. Yes, Hungarian composer Franz Liszt.
Yeah.
He was like a virtuoso, but apparently he was quite famous because he was so darn good. The piano couldn't actually keep up.
Right.
How he was playing, so like strings would snap and like keys would fall off, and like by the end of like a gig, the piano would like be in pieces.
Yeah.
Every single time he played.
So the construction.
Like that's why the construction of it totally changed. Yep. All because of one crazy Hungarian boy. So
yeah. Cool. So that's kind of all the different types of keyboard instruments that you can get. Hopefully it gives you an idea of what you should be getting if you need a grand piano. Yeah. that is possible to do, but you need to basically remortgage your house. So we'll move on to tuning and maintenance. So there's a couple of things on here that have this is coming from my own personal experience, and if there's anything that you want to add, please feel free. But first of all, for like maintenance, key action can get sticky, so you should replace the pads. So in an electric keyboard instrument like a synth action, especially, the keyboard, when you press down on the keys, it's pressing a little button that it's like an on-off switch, and that on-off switch tells the computer and the keyboard to produce a note. But there's a little pad underneath to soften the blow, because you don't want big clunky feels. You know, when you press the key down, you don't want it to go click click like a mouse click. You want it to be nice and soft. So there's a pad there. If that pad, if it's really old, it can pick up moisture and dampness and just life, and it can get sticky. I've had keyboards in the past where you press the note and the note will stick. The key will stick to the pad, and you have to lift the note back up again. So that's quite common. Happened in my Tyros. And basically, you take it away to a specialist. They pull all the keys off, they rip all the pads off, and they put on some nice fresh pads. And it's all good. It's kind of similar to a clarinet. I used to play clarinet, and you've got the little pads, saxophone as well, that go over the holes.
Yeah, flute as well. Yeah.
They get really sticky, and sometimes they stick to the instrument. It's really annoying, and you have to clean them and stuff and replace them.
I used to have to ask my dad to buy me cigarette papers, but not for for what you think,
to absorb the moisture.
But you stick them like underneath the pad, and they're quite good for like drying them, cleaning them out. Yep. So
it's the same thing with keyboards. It's quite rare, but it does happen. And buttons and things like that stop working, especially on the Tyros that I have. There's a few buttons that don't work, and again, it's you have to get into it, and the button that engages the switch loses contact, and you need to replace some bits on it. So a lot of them are all touch screen now, so you don't have the problem with actual physical buttons. The old Tyros had about 40,000 buttons on it. The new keyboards have a lot less because they have touch screen functionality and stuff. So, and you can also hook them up to a keyboard, a computer, and you can access all of the functions of the keyboard by just clicking on the screen on your computer. So there's that as well. So along the lines of maintenance, this is probably the second most important thing, other than just maintaining the actual instrument itself. Keep files well organized, make them easy to find. So on the Core Kronos, which is a workstation keyboard, and even the Tyros, even some arranger keyboards and Nords and things, when you're saving patches, if possible, I like to keep them saved in folders relative to that instrument. So if I'm making string patches, I keep them in my strings folder. If I'm making electronic keyboard patches, I put them in the electric piano patches. Keeps them well organized. And on the Kronos, like I said, it has a thing called a set list mode. There's nothing worse than if you're in the middle of a gig and you're just about to start a new song, and your keyboard is just going round with his little scroll wheel going, can't find the patch, wait. I've been there. This is why I'm saying it. Like, oh, wait, I've not got my string sound up yet. Hold on. Whereas on the Kronos, you can pre-save all of your patches that you're going to be playing and arrange them on the screen. It's a set list mode. It's like pages in a book. You just start on number 1, click that, everything all lines up. You have 3 pedals on the floor. You have a volume pedal, which can be a wah pedal, which can be anything you assign it to. And you have a middle pedal, which is your change pedal, so it changes to the next set list. And then your damper pedal, sustain pedal. And you can even change the functionality of those pedals. You can make, like I said, in the first one, you can make it a volume pedal. In the next patch, you can make it a wah pedal. You can make it a chorus pedal. You can do anything. And each time you change, all your settings go with it, as long as they're pre-saved. Having all that worked out in advance, so that the only thing you have to do to change your sound is tap a square on the screen in front of you, and it's all easy.
Yeah.
That's honestly, if you're doing really complicated music and you've got multiple keyboards and you're getting fed up with it and just trying to get all your patches sorted, I recommend a workstation like the Core Kronos, because you can get all your sounds on the one keyboard, and it's nice and neat and tidy, and you're packed away nice and quick because it's only one keyboard. Okay, next point, back up your hard drive. If you've got custom patches, can't stress enough. If you've spent hours and hours making your own patches for your band and your set lists and all that, you can stick in an external hard drive or memory stick and just back up the whole instrument, so that if the thing gets wiped, I do a show for the last 4 years in a row. I've done pantomime, and I run the entire pantomime from the keyboard. So all the backing tracks, all the sound effects as well. So I have, say there's like 22 songs in the whole show. They're all saved on my set list, and I just tap the square and press play, and they're singing to my keyboard on stage, and then it's pantomime, so there's like sound effects, like things getting dropped, and I make funny noises and little sound effects I play on the keyboard, and it's all saved. Yeah. So some of these sounds I've created in my studio, I've downloaded them off of a website or something, but they're all saved on the hard drive.
Can I just add?
Yeah.
Yeah, can I just add? It's a very good, the sound effects, bang on. Like because I went to see it.
Yeah.
Oh, was that? Yeah.
It wasn't me playing that night.
It wasn't you playing it, but
it's this, you get the idea.
You had arranged it all.
Yeah. I did all the music for that. But I was actually in the audience this year. I didn't actually have to be there to do the thing. So, if you're in the middle of that show and your keyboard conks out, I had obviously a backup. I had some of the stuff saved on a computer that I could just call up immediately and just get by. But I have a friend who also has a Kronos. So if my Kronos carked it, died, and I'm like, oh, what am I going to do? I had the entire show backed up on an external hard drive. I could go and grab my friend's Kronos, bring it to the gig, put the backup stick in, download all the information onto the keyboard, and it's essentially exactly my keyboard sitting in front of me, and just continue as I left off. It's incredible. It's amazing. And it's because I organise my files and back up stuff. It's never happened, but there was one night where it had a little hissy fit. It just randomly reset one night right before the first act, and I was like, please don't die on me, because there's nothing worse. 5 seconds of silence is a very long time in theatre. It's an eternity. Anyway, here's some general maintenance. Keep in a dry place. Of course, it's an electrical instrument, or if you've got like a Rhodes and it's got reeds and stuff in it, keep it dry, because it'll just get ruined and rust, and the circuits will die, and then you'll have to get a new keyboard. So just an obvious, keep it in your house, keep it dry. Don't leave it in your car overnight and dampness and dew get into it. Just bad idea. If you have a piano, and as pianos love to do, they love to go out of tune. Once a year, get a piano tuner in. I think you can get a piano tuner for about £70. They'll come in, tune your piano. They'll even restring it sometimes if it needs it. Don't let it go out of tune, because it's just disgusting. And the last thing on maintenance is, as always, buy hard cases wherever possible. Can't stress enough. Yeah. I have carried my Core Kronos across Glasgow on a little hard case trolley thing, and it's been bashed upstairs and across curbs, in the backs of vans, up lifts, just getting thrown about by stage crew, and just abused beyond belief. Had that been in a soft case, my keyboard would be in bits. It'd be wrecked. Hard cases are the best thing, the best invention in the whole world, better than sliced bread. Come at me. They just are.
No, I'm with you, man.
Yeah,
I'm with you.
Hard cases are like my favourite thing in the world.
It just gives you so much peace of mind.
Yep.
Unless
your instrument is a tank, like Julian's bass cab, which basically is a hard case with a speaker in it.
It is basic. It kind of. I totally. Abused it just to give it that rough genuine road worn look. I mean, it looks kind of cool now.
You'd be pretty. It'd be a hard challenge to try and break that thing. Getting a hard case for that thing would be the biggest waste of money ever. It's like a phone case for a Nokia 3310.
3310. Yeah,
completely useless.
No, it is. Yeah.
Cool. So moving on to setup. So I would recommend, just for your own sanity, buy your own keyboard stool, and set it at your preferred height. So if you like to sit and play keys while you're playing live, you'll have your preferred practice height. So it's best to have your own stool and your own keyboard stand to have at the right height that you like. Because if you go to a gig and you just grab whatever chair is happened to be there, oh, it's too low, I need to bring my keyboard stand down, and then everything's too low and you feel uncomfortable and it's just wrong. So bring your own stool and stand. And if you like to stand, have it written. Have like little presets in your, by presets I mean get a pen and mark on your stand where you set it to. On my keyboard stand I got a pencil and drew a line. So when I put the thing up, I just bring it up to the line and then shut it, and it's the same height every single time, and it just feels right for me. Just it's a bit of a no-brainer, but you wouldn't believe. I didn't used to do that. I used to just take my keyboard to the gig with its stand and then find a random chair, and
and then hope for the
just hope for the best. And then sometimes I would get a tremendously sore back, me being tall, and it's miserable. It's horrible. This is a recommendation from me. Buy your own passive stereo DI box. So
they're not expensive.
Nah, I've got one here. It's the DPDB by Art, company called Art. They make really good DI boxes. That's a passive DI box. Passive means it doesn't run on power, it doesn't have a battery, it doesn't have phantom power. It's just a magnet. It's just a transformer, whatever it is. So you plug in your keyboard. So keyboards are in stereo, left and right. So you have two jack cables that plug into your DI box, and then the DI has two XLR outputs, left and right, that go to the mixing desk, the PA, whatever. So I would recommend getting your own. Yeah. 9 times out of 10, the gig will have their own DI boxes. And a lot of the time they'll take mono, they won't take stereo. But sometimes they'll take stereo, but they'll be mixing in mono. But that's fine. But it's taking the stereo information, even though it's coming out mono, it's taking the information from both sides. And it's good for studio and stuff, just to have your own DI box. They're decent. You can get decent quality ones for not very much money. So that brings me on to jack cables. Get yourself some high quality jack leads. I recommend Neutrik connectors with some pretty heavy duty cables, because lots of people love to stand on cables and break them. It's a TS cable. That's the tip sleeve cable, the same as a guitar. Same as a guitar lead. No longer than 5 meters. When you start going longer than 5 meters, you start to pick up interference. That's why you use a DI box. Is you want to make the signal balanced so that it eliminates background hum and noise and rubbish. Just get some decent 5 meter jack to jacks. Don't cheap out on cables, because they always let you down. And last on setup, get yourself a decent sustain pedal. The amount of times I've seen sustain pedals fail in the middle of gigs, it's unbelievable. They'll just randomly stop working, or they'll flip polarity. That's always fun. So when you press when you press the pedal, it's supposed to make the note sustain, but sometimes they flip, and when you press the pedal, the note stops, and then when you let go of the pedal, it sustains, and it's the exact opposite. That's fun. Man, so fun. It happens all the time in certain gigs. I've got an old Yamaha one that's ancient. It's like 20 years old, and it's never failed me. It's the squeakiest pedal on earth. It just squeaks all the time. I can maybe get it, actually. Wait to hear this. Right.
That's some ASMR right there.
So if you're doing like really intimate jazz acoustic music, maybe get a nice well-oiled one, but that one does me really well. It's robust. I can throw it around. Same with volume pedal and the changer pedal. The changer pedal's kind of cheap because it's just all you do is you just tap it, and it's for changing scenes and stuff if you need that. And my volume pedal is actually not very good because every time I press it, it falls apart, which is not ideal, but I hardly ever use it anyway. So, lastly, amplification. So, some of the cheaper keyboards, like your Arranger keyboards, well, they're not cheap, but Arranger keyboards and your home keyboards have inbuilt speakers, inbuilt sound. So that's the ones where you can go to the music shop and press the keys and sound comes out. The Korg, Kronos, all the workstation keyboards, pretty much all of them don't have inbuilt sound. And I remember going shopping for keyboards, and I remember my dad, who knows nothing about music really, he's like, "Oh, that's a rip-off, you're spending that much and it doesn't have its own speakers." I'm like, that's not really the point, because you don't want the inbuilt speakers. The inbuilt speakers aren't good, they're usually rubbish. So obviously, I've got the keyboard set up in my control room in the studio, and I have them hooked up to my studio monitors. That's how I listen. And it also has a headphone port at the front here, so if I want to play with headphones, I can just plug them in and it's fine. A lot of people use amps, keyboard amps. I've never owned a keyboard amp. I've never. My Tyros has its own speakers built. Well, it's not built in. They're kind of external, sold with the Tyros. I've always used them, and if it's in the studio, I put it through the PA. So I've never used a keyboard amp. But Roland do good, and they do stereo amps as well. So I have like two cabs.
Yeah. I guess it kind of just depends on what you're. Yeah, I guess it just kind of depends on what you're needing it for.
Yeah.
Or what your setup is.
Yep.
Because I guess if you're doing more, I can see the value of getting a keyboard amp if you're playing. I don't know, like if you're playing as part of a jazz quartet or something, and you don't really need a PA. You just do like a rough mix. You've got all your amps, and you just play in and you play the space, and you use the acoustics of the space. Then sure,
perfect. I
guess that would work. But if you're playing in a wedding band, getting a keyboard amp is pretty useless. To be honest, getting an amp for that kind of thing is kind of just a little bit unnecessary. Just get a pedal, get a really good pedal board.
That kind of brings me to monitoring. I want to do an episode on monitoring. I think I'm going to do one. So
actually,
stage monitoring or any other monitoring, we can talk about that. Anyway, what if you have a Nord or a Kronos or something that doesn't have inbuilt sound, and you don't own a studio like I do, and you don't have a PA, and you want to hear your keyboard in your house, then get a keyboard amp, or hook it up to headphones. If you've got monitors for your PC, I mean, you could use them, but they're usually pretty naff, pretty rubbish. So
it depends, man. Because you can get some pretty decent
PC speakers.
PC speakers now.
A lot of them are coloured, though.
Like studio.
That's the thing. Because a lot of them are quite coloured, so you get a lot of bass, and you don't get an accurate picture.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah,
I'm using the Adam A5Xs in the studio plus a subwoofer, and that's for studio sound. So it's a pretty flat sound, and you get a good accurate representation of your instrument. If you're building patches with PC speakers, and then you take your keyboard to the big venue with a big PA, and there's no bass at all because you've just been listening to just bass in your house. A little practice amp's quite good. Plus, you can use it for monitoring. You can take that amp to the gig and use it as a monitor if you so desire.
Yeah.
But use studio monitors if you have them. If you've got maybe some Rockets or something, then you can plug your keyboard into them. But almost always your keyboard will be sent to a house PA. When you go to the gig, it'll go to the PA, and you'll have an on-stage monitor as well. But like you said, if you're doing a little low-key acoustic thing, and it's in a little cafe or it's jazz or whatever, you'll probably have a little keyboard amp or just a tiny little PA, house PA, going around the pub. That's kind of that. And of course, in-ear monitoring and stage monitoring, that's a separate sort of thing external to instruments that I'm definitely going to chat about because I've been doing in-ear monitoring since 2014 for a lot of the stuff that I do, and I know you're a fairly recent, what do you call it, user of
convert.
Yeah, because a lot of people kind of are like either one or the other for certain things.
Yeah, no, I've been it's actually because of the kind of stuff that I'm doing with the wedding band at the moment. We're starting to use some backing tracks for certain things.
Yep.
So I need to hear that click.
Good monitors.
So there's that, and there's also, I want to save my hearing.
Absolutely,
So we can talk about that.
Yep.
In the monitoring episode.
Cool. That kind of wraps up the keyboard stuff. I was pleasantly surprised on how much I still can remember and retain on the topic, because like I said, I've not played keyboard in any band since 2015 or something, 2014.
Right.
But I mean, I'm still like kind of in the world, but not really, because I just do primarily drums. But yeah, this was quite fun. Kind of looking back on all the old stuff, like looking on all the like websites for all the different types of keyboards you can buy, and I'm like, oh, it's been like the keyboard I thought was the best keyboard you could buy has now been replaced by something new. I've just not been keeping up with all the technology stuff. So yeah. Next week, I don't know what we're gonna make part 5 of this, if we're gonna even have a part 5. I'm gonna have a wee chat with you and see what we could add on to this, but have a wee talk. We might move on to something else or pick another instrument. I'm not quite sure. If you have any suggestions for additional instruments, like give us a shout. Or
don't be shy.
Dinna be shy. You can send us a wee message on Instagram or Facebook, or email us. You can fill in our wee contact form at the website, levelupurband.com. And as we said before, we have compiled a list of recommended affordable gear. So it's recommended by Julian and I, of gear. If you're starting out and you want to get some good gear that's not going to break the bank, we've got a list of gear that you can refer to and go, right, okay, I can get this cable, I can get this mic. And that is available on our website. You can download that for free. What you can do is just sign up for free, and you can get access to all the PDFs. The PDFs will change over time. That's why it's better if you sign up, because we'll update it like just through time, because it's not always going to be true that this particular instrument or this particular cable is going to be the best. Things change. So you're always kept up to date with what we put on the website. We're going to have lots more lists to come of recommendations and things to think about. And if you're listening on a podcast catcher or YouTube, give us a like, subscribe, rating, review. Just get it out there. Share it with your pals. Really helps us get the podcast out to more people. And hope you enjoyed this episode and this little series, and hopefully we'll think of something else to add to it. Hope you all have a good week, and we'll see you all next week. Bye.
All right, bye.